Sometimes I would fall into melancholy. In the evenings I would sit in my bedroom or on the terrace and gaze at the garden. I listened to the calls of the night birds and looked at the shimmering waters of the lake. I sought silence and solitude. Aina. I think it wasn't actually love. Probably not. But it was certainly a fierce, fiery desire. If I could have another woman who attracted me as powerfully as Aina did, the teacher would have quickly faded from my mind. But in my world, there was mainly Aina, so I burned for her. I don't know if she noticed what was happening to me. Probably right away, because she no longer scolded me as harshly as she once did, even though instead of listening to what she was telling me about diplomacy and trade, I only listened to the melody of her voice and inhaled the scent of a sweet flag perfumed her hair. She seemed not to pay the slightest attention to it. One hot night, I couldn't stand it anymore and went around the house of steel to find her bedroom, which, like all the others, had a patio open to the garden. I really had no idea what I was doing. I just wanted to look at her. I know that seeing her might bring some semblance of relief. I sneaked behind the bushes until I found her patio. In the center, there were small white rocks, and a low, twisted pine tree grew there. I crouched behind a blooming Letitia bush, its flowers as big as my head, and waited. It was hot, so the teacher had the wall to the garden folded away, like everyone else, and the curtains rolled up to catch even slightest breeze. She was sitting on a thick cushion, drinking something from a small cup. Her servant was crouching motionless by the wall, and a summer mattress made of thick felt, covered with delicate, cool fabric, had already been laid out on the platform. 2 lamps were burning, and there was silence. I watched. Then Aina dismissed the servant and stood up. She walked to the very edge of the bedroom, almost onto the terrace, and slowly untied the ribbon that held her home dress. The thin, shimmering fabric slid off her shoulders and hips like water. I distinctly heard the light hiss as it slid down her skin. I almost groaned in awe. In an instant, all the secrets I had so diligently pursued were revealed to me all at once, and as generously as I could never have dreamed. At that moment, I wished I had 100 eyes to see simultaneously her narrow feet, her slender hips, her muscular, flat stomach, and her swaying breasts with her dark, erect nipples, and above all, the neat triangle between her legs where 2 folds running down her stomach met like the delta of a river. Among us Kyrenes, nudity is something unusual, though no one flaunts it. It is natural. I had seen naked women before, in the baths, in the house of cinnabar, or by the lake. I had seen dancers who were nothing but oil, pendants, chains, and gold dust. But this was different. This was Aina, my teacher, a goddess. When the old Amitraji code was still in force, even the suspicion of seeing a woman's nakedness without her knowledge could lead to a man being blinded. For showing desire, improper proposals, or touch, a flogging was the punishment. It was forbidden even to look at women from the higher castes. They were the ones who had access to the realms of the underground goddess, and therefore male lust towards them was a crime. A man could approach a woman only with a goddess' permission, and only at her invitation. However, he had to approach this honor solely with reverence and humility. At that moment, I understood it completely, when Aina slowly wrapped herself with oil. And then she took a Kabiric saber and a round shield from the wall and began to practice. That was even worse. At once beautiful and wild, so painful that I felt as if my desire was tearing at my lower abdomen with claws. I watched as Aina's snake-like body moved and gleamed with oil, as her slender muscle tensed and flexed under her thin skin. It was like a dance. Aina was like a cobra and a fish writhing in water. The shield and the curved blade floated in her hands and moved around her body. I heard the thud of her bare feet on the carpets, the swish of steel, and the pounding of my own heart. And then the teacher set the weapon aside and entered the bath. I saw her silhouette in the dim light of a single lamp and through the thin layer of muslin that veiled the bath. She removed the pins and the clips from her hair, letting it cascade in a tangled wave down her back. And then she descended the steps into the pool of cool water. I sat and watched. Aina didn't summon her servants. She lay alone in the water, lazily running a sponge along her raised leg or down her arm. At that moment, sitting behind the blooming Letitia bush, maddened and burning with desire, I would have given to be that sponge. Then she emerged from behind the screen, wet and naked, rubbing herself with a thick white towel, and sat casually on her carpet, crossing her legs at the ankles. She reached for a slender jug of palm juice, and as she pulled the caps, she spoke in that low, melodious voice of hers. "It's so much comfortable on the carpet than in the bushes. Come in and sit with me, Doraemon." I had been taught many things, but not how to maintain my composure in such a situation. I stood up, blushing and speechless, and stammered, "Aina, I—" "Sit down, young tiger," she replied. I sat, trying with all my might not to tremble. My teacher, Aina, who had until then taught me the principles of politics, trade and intrigue, leaned toward me, handing me a cup of palm juice, her round breast with its pointed nipple swaying, tiny droplets of water sparkling on her oiled skin like jewels. "Tell me, what would you give to touch me?" I cleared my throat. I don't know. I have nothing you might want." "And if you had, what would you be willing to give for me to touch you?" I didn't know, but I felt the word everything was only on the tip of my tongue. What exists between a man and a woman is not much different from what happens everywhere else in life, Doraemon. It's part of a path uphill. It can be good or bad, just like combat, like trade, and like politics. Moreover, it contains within it the principles of trade, combat, and intrigue, and it's just as powerful. At the same time, it is something we desire so greatly that the desire itself can be dangerous. If someone is lucky, they might live without the combat of politics. But no one wants to, and a few can live without this. You will meet many women in your life, young tiger. Some will be indifferent to you, some will catch your eye, and some you will love. Some you will also desire, perhaps as much as you desire me at this moment." She smiled slightly. "Or perhaps not, because I am the first. I am a mystery. For now, you can only imagine what I can give and how it tastes." For now? Did she say, for now? If you look deep inside yourself and think how much you would give to possess me, you will understand how great a power a woman can have over a man. The teacher continued. You will also understand how dangerous this can be for the Empire. You may become the Emperor, young tiger. No one should have such power over you. Remember, this is a battle. Only in combat the weapon is the ability to inflict pain. Here, it is the ability to give pleasure. What in combat is the threat of suffering, here is the promise of ecstasy. However, the result is the same. It is the power that comes from the victory over the defeated. You decided when the time came for you to learn this. Look, You should have come in and said, Aina, I am your sovereign and I desire your body. My wish is to possess you. But instead, you hid in the bushes to watch me from afar and seek relief in your longing. Do you not know that you may be the future emperor on the Iron Throne? Or someone who stands behind the ruler's throne? Either way, the fate of the empire will rest in your hands. You are my sovereign, one of the most powerful people in the world, yet you acted like an ordinary young man, blinded by the body of an alluring woman. You are already a man, Tohimo, and in these matters, men are weak and helpless. They cannot help the fire of longing and desire that constantly burns within them. It is like a consuming disease, and the cure is only in the hands of a woman. A cure she dispenses sparingly. We cannot allow you to be weak, tiger. We cannot allow you to forget who you are, desperately searching for a cure. Remove your robe. What? I don't know if I blushed, but I was so overwhelmed with emotion that I wanted to flee. I felt myself trembling all over, and my heart was pounding. You heard me. Take off your robe. Yes, the loincloth too. In this struggle, there is no armor. It is bare flesh against bare flesh, like at the moment of birth. I sat naked before my teacher, and her body, which I had dreamed of for so long, was right in front of me. I could see every detail of her skin and couldn't take my eyes off her, but at the same time I was acutely aware of how I looked, and I tried to hide as best as I could. Stop being ashamed right now, she called out. You have nothing to be ashamed of, and that part of your body cannot lie. It has a life of its own. You may want to be cool and dignified, but this little worm has a different opinion. It wants to be a burning spear. There will be times when you want to act, but it will want to sleep or be sad, because it cannot lie. You can hide fear, worries, or desire. You can act against your moods or even against yourself. You have a character. This part of you does not. It is like an animal. That is why you cannot be at its mercy, and it cannot have power over you. Its hunger cannot take away your reason. Now touch me. Touch my breast. Aina, are you teaching me? Aina took my hand and guided it over her body. And what did you think? This is the best way. I will teach you how to win. You already know how to deal with men, but this is the easy part. Now, you must learn how to deal with women. They are more powerful and more dangerous. But I will teach that too. First, however, I must deal with your insane desire. You cannot teach table manners to someone who is starving. Right now, you are incapable of understanding or doing anything. She pushed me onto the carpet, and I felt a gentle tickle of her tousled hair on my stomach. And then, something happened that I couldn't even name. The world has exploded in an instant. I screamed, not realizing I was screaming. It felt like time stood still, and the entire world was reduced to a single point on my body. I wanted it to last forever, but in reality, it was just a brief moment. Aina let me lie still. Then she rested her head on my stomach and wiped her mouth. See how simple was that? Now you feel relief, for the first time in a long while. And it's a feeling you would give a great deal for. A clever woman could gain considerable influence, knowledge, or wealth in exchange for that small moment of happiness. A weak woman should use your vulnerability to hurt you for years. She could make you feel humiliated forever. If some harlot or random woman had satisfied you, you would have thought she was the one of a kind, and you would have likely fallen in love immediately. But it was only I who did it. It was very easy to him. Any woman could do it if she wanted to, and it wouldn't take much effort. I just knew how, and I know I can do it again well. It's safer for everyone this way. Now rest, and then we'll start again, but this time for real. You will begin by getting to know my body. And in the end, It truly was a lesson, just like dancing or indeed the art of combat. I visited her bedroom almost every day. I would come when dusk fell and the lamps were lit, and I would leave at the hour of the ox in the middle of the night. There were tasks, there were knowledge, and there were punishments. When I did something particularly clumsy, greedy, or hastily, I would get slapped in the face. Then she would explain it to me again, show me, guide my fingers, or demonstrate on me what she meant I would understand. She made me repeat it over and over again, until she was satisfied that I had grasped it. Today I know there are women who, during lovemaking, want to dominate, give orders, humiliate a man, or inflict pain. Only then do they feel satisfied. But Aina was not one of them. She was truly teaching me, carefully and thoroughly, step by step. Just as she had taught me about intrigue, diplomacy, politics, and trade, she taught me this new art. I even feared I might lose my heart and interest in it, but nothing of the sort happened. Those were the only lessons I wouldn't have missed for anything in the world, despite the fact that Aina was a very demanding teacher. When she first experienced spasms of pleasures with me, I felt prouder than I had ever felt in my life. But she quickly brought me back to earth. I did that myself using you, she said. There's nothing wrong with that, and that's how it should be. It's like playing the center. You play me and I play you. I guided you by the hand and got what I wanted. But you have not defeated me. That will only happen when I can't resist you, when I give myself to you even when I don't want to, and when I whimper and beg for more. When you make me lose control so that I can't pretend anything. That might happen, but not yet. You still need more skill and self-control. You will often give me ordinary pleasure, but you will know when that moment arrives. When it happens because you want it to, not because I do. Then it will be my defeat, just as I can defeat you at any moment now. Now, take more oil and spread it here. Position your fingers in the roof of the world. By day, she was the same Aina, with her hair elegantly styled and wearing her buttoned-up embroidered kaftan. She would lay out scrolls, maps, or the Tarbis board and teach me. One morning, I grabbed her buttock and stroked it the way I knew she liked, only to be slapped hard across the face, making everything go dark for a moment. That is for the evening class, student, she snarled. I'm not your lover, Tohimon, and I will never be. But I'm your teacher, and I want you to show me a new trade route from Narjin to Akasana and explain what we can gain from extending control over it. Thanks to the evening lessons, which I attended with great diligence, I felt a sense of peace and more clarity. Although I often returned home tired and with aching loins, I felt an immense sense of relief. I still experienced desire, and it began to seem to me that it was an insatiable craving, but it was something entirely different from the wild madness I had experienced before. At least I started to understand what was happening around me, and it wasn't good. At least you're not staring at a woman like a mountain wolf anymore, redhead. Hone grumbled once during a trip to a city. It's getting dangerous around here. The Arazimites are wandering everywhere, wrapped in case tracks, and they are starting to openly hunt down offenses against goddess. Our men are forced to go out to the city in no less than 4-person patrols. For the past few days, bodies of people wearing national attire have been found in canals and rivers. Tyrannies too. With each passing day, the tension became more palpable. Crowds constantly camped out at the city wells with buckets and water skins, full of angry, exhausted people covered in sun-protective cloaks. Fight broke out frequently. The city garrison patrols, which used to walk around armed mainly with whips and wooden clubs, pushing through the crowd while joking with vendors and teasing courtesans, now started to look threatening. They had been issued iron helmets that we introduced a few years ago, and they also carried swords and spears, with 2 archers accompanying each patrol. More and more frequently, I heard curses in the crowd against the foreign dynasty, and more often someone would devoutly invoke the underground mother, probably out of cowardice. The red robes and silver masks of the priests of the underground had been a rare sight until recently. They used to squeeze through the crowd modestly, sometimes trying to admonish and scold, but they were openly mocked and shoved. Now, they were everywhere. They walked arrogantly, surrounded by acolytes with shaved heads and carving claps, and the crowd parted before them. Merchants would cover their goods, and people in national dress, couples and women dressed in ways not in accordance with the code of the earth, suddenly disappeared from the streets, hiding in gateways and under arcades. A strange symbol began to appear on the walls, drawn in charcoal or ochre, and sometimes it seemed in blood. A circle, cut by a vertical line. So I asked Holm if he knew what it meant. He spat on the ground. The underground womb, the sign of a cursed cult. I was tempted to say that, for example, Aina's womb looked completely different, but I knew that was a foolish boast. I kept silent. Trying to show off like that in front of Holm would make me pathetic. Then, indeed, the plague of flies came. They were everywhere, huge, fat, and frantic like before a storm. They swarmed into eyes and mouths and covered food. We burned incense, but it didn't help much. In the northern provinces, on the other hand, a storm was raging that hadn't been seen in years, flooding fields and preventing any fishing. In the Yamarkand province, forests, now dry as a pepper, caught fire. In Sauragar and Kangabat, a plague broke out. The words "wrath of the gods" and "fire of the desert" were sounding everywhere like a haunted echo. The prophetess appeared out of nowhere, repeatedly. Wherever she showed up, the springs gushed forth, dead trees bloomed and bore fruit, the blind regained their sight, and the lame stood on their feet. She washed people's ulcers with ordinary sponge as if they were clumps of dried clay, and the skin underneath was healthy and smooth, without scars. Everywhere she went, people handed over their possessions to the cult and erected red towers. The priests of the underground mother swarmed like rats. Around the temples, women's houses were built. Mothers, lovers, and wives suddenly stopped noticing the men and moved in there to link alongside Athena. Secret mysteries were held in caves, during which, reportedly, maddened men would mutilate their genitals. Bodies were found with slit throats and hearts torn out. Sacrificial stone tables were discovered in caves, drenched in blood. Although our law punished human sacrifices with death, it was clear that someone had started feeding the Lady of the Harvest again. I stood with my father and Leverbelt in the Hall of the World, a vast chamber in the palace where a mosaic depicted the entire known world. Amitrash and all its provinces, the Northern Sea, the Great Sea, and the Inner Sea, and also Kebir, Nassim, the deserts, foreign lands, everything. Specially shaped tokens represented cities, and others represented mountains that rose above the floor. Over the cities and settlements where Nahal Ifria, the fire of the desert, had been seen, the emperor had ordered red-painted terracotta figures to be placed. The figure of a hooded woman now populated vast swathes of the empire, from the settlements on the border of Nahalzim to Kebzegar. And she was approaching the provinces of the inner circle. "She can't simply be everywhere," my father exclaimed angrily. "One day she creates a wellspring in the city of Kamgabat, and the next day she sets the Pahande in Heramis on fire. That's 12 leagues in one day, and she always travels on foot. Always on foot. She is accompanied by 6 disciples," I noted. "And they carry that cursed mysterious chest. 6 of them, so it's heavy. They have no supplies, no water, no food. Just the chest. Oh, and there are also 2 blind war leopards running alongside her. Why can't we find out more? Or maybe at least what's inside the chest? I asked the teacher. But I was no longer asking as a student. My question wasn't a sign of helplessness. I demanded an answer. We've already lost 4 spies, Lodowego replied hollowly. They simply didn't return. I don't even know if they were killed. Were they Kirinese? That doesn't matter, the Emperor snapped. You won't be ruling Kiranen, but Amitrash. All people will be your subjects. If you start thinking like that, soon there won't be a single office not held by your compatriots, and you'll drive the whole empire to rebellion. You misunderstood me, father, I replied. This is just about this cult, a follower of the journey up the mountain and the path to the Creator wouldn't want to turn to the underground. Amitrash is different. They may know this religion and fear it. They may also long for it in some way or respect it. They were vetted in that regard, he answered more calmly. I would trust each of them as much as anyone can be trusted. These people are selected from the most sensible and trained from childhood. They can't be fooled by simple tricks, and they won't yearn for the tyranny of the Red Towers. I looked at the floor. The Red Towers were already standing in many cities, forts, settlements, and even small kishlaks. It looked as if they were advancing from the desert, surrounding the inner circle. Things have gone too far, I said. My noble father should send assassins. That has already been done, muttered Leverbell, with the same result as spies. It's not easy to kill someone who miraculously appears here and there. We don't know where she spends the night, or where she'll show up tomorrow. Besides, it's not just about the prophetess. The higher castes are openly starting to support the priests. No surprise, they would regain their former position. Then we need to strike at the priests. People are disappearing, blood sacrifices are being made. We have a reason,